Joining me now, host of the Andrea Kaye radio show, Andrea Kaye, and Democratic strategist Joel Payne. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, Liz.
All right, Joel, let me start with you for the question of the day today. You heard it in the introduction. In my opinion, the fact that the liberal media and Democrats, too, in elected office are calling President Trump's executive order a ban on Muslims, a Muslim ban. I don't understand this. And I mean, nowhere in the executive order is there any such order. And my question is, have any of these protesters actually read Trump's executive order?
Well, it certainly is a ban in effect, and I respect your opinion, but I would just say that the impact of having people separated from their families, of having people who have done nothing wrong being treated as criminals is terrible and really is not consistent with what President Trump claims that he wants for our country. There is a way to keep America safe while protecting our liberties, as you said at the top of the program.
Right. But I mean, I'm going to push back just a little bit here before I pivot to Andrea and say, when you say that these people are being treated as criminals, I mean, if this is the severe vetting that President Trump is talking about, holding people who are coming from these nations that are known to export terrorism for a matter of hours at the airport before letting most of them go, I mean, I'd hardly categorize that as treating these people as criminals.
Well, you probably wouldn't, and I might not, because I'm not the one that's being subjected to it. The fact of the matter is that you know, other administrations, other you know, the Homeland Security departments and Defense departments have found a way to keep us safe without stepping all over people's liberty. And I'm disappointed that President Trump has not found that balance quite yet. I'm hopeful that he will going forward. I will say, beyond just the action, which I find is un-American and really does not fit within the fabric, the core values of our country, it's the ineptitude and it's the, you know, how this administration is flailing so far. I'm really concerned that the people who are in power are really, it resembles amateur hour. It doesn't really seem like they've got the A-team on this so far.
Right, and I mean, that's the common critique against it. Andrea, let me pivot to you here. I mean, Joel says that other administrations have managed to keep our nation safe without implementing this. I don't see it like that. I think that, especially since 2015, the attacks against our nation by radical Islamists have skyrocketed. We see that statistically. How do you respond to this?
Well, first of all, I respond by saying, with respect to your guest, he didn't address the issue with your question of the day, which is whether or not it's actually a ban against Muslims, with which it's not. There's something about 70, upwards of 70, at least more than 60 Muslim countries around the world. Only 7 were affected here. The same 7 countries that Obama actually had listed before. In fact, in 2011, Obama issued a stop from bringing anyone here from Iraq. So this is not a ban on Muslims. This is a stop work order, if you will, or a temporary restriction on bringing people here who come from hotbeds of terrorist areas. And we have not been kept safe by the Obama administration. All you have to do is look at San Bernardino, just that one incident alone. Or how about the Tsarnaev brothers with Boston bombing? I could actually go on and on and on.
Right, and Joel, let me just ask you, you know, you say this is un-American. Did you feel the same way in 2011 when President Obama put that temporary moratorium on Syrian refugees resettling in America?
No, I didn't. And I think you're talking about, and forgive me if I'm not referring to what you're referring to. I think you're talking about the order on Iraqi refugees after the incident in Kentucky,
you are correct. It is
where
Iraqi,
there
not
were 2
Syrian.
Iraqi nationals. Yeah, and I mean, the difference there is that it wasn't a ban, it was a slowing down, and it was done for cause. It was done because there was a threat that the administration wanted to vet and look into, and they did it, and they did it in a way without trampling over the rights of all Americans. I'm sure there were people who disagreed with that at the time.
Trampling all over the rights of all Americans. I mean, this is temporary. This is a pause, and we have reason to believe. The FBI director himself said that terrorists, ISIS operatives, are planning to disguise themselves as U.S.-bound refugees to infiltrate and attack our nation. I mean, it's temporary, the same as Obama's moratorium on Iraqi refugees, and it is with cause until we can figure out how to properly vet. I don't understand it. Please explain this to me. I don't understand the difference between the two. What I do see before my eyes is a very different response from Democrats.
With all due respect, if you think a 5-year-old boy that's flying into LaGuardia Airport is a threat to our national security, then we just have a fundamental disagreement here. This is not doing anything to keep us safer. In fact, I'd argue it's making us less safe because it is propaganda for ISIS and for all the people who want to do harm to our country all over the world.
No, obviously I'm not talking about the 5-year-old child here, but I mean, I can point out examples for you if you want. You know, you can look to Minnesota, to the mall stabbing. I mean, that was a Somalian refugee. The Ohio State attacker that drove the car, that was a refugee. The Boston bomber, he was a refugee. I mean, Andrea, speak to this for me.
Well, first of all, I would say that I think everybody coming here, including 5-year-old children, when we're dealing with an ideology over in the Middle East where we have parents that are strapping suicide bombs onto children, I think we absolutely have to consider everybody who is coming here as somebody who needs to be undergo some vetting. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. And by the way, we're not talking about Americans being trampled. We're talking about non-American citizens having to go through being inconvenienced, if you will, at some airports. And by the way, Americans have been incredibly inconvenienced at airports. We've had old ladies, you know, grew up in Iowa being fondled and groped, and Americans being data mined because we don't want to do any kind of profiling here. You know, we got to make sure we're not hurting anybody else's feelings. I mean, that's kind of insane with what's going on here with the left. And oh, by the way, if we're going to talk about trampling anybody's rights and something about being un-American, didn't President Obama ban Cuban refugees days before he left office?
I mean, he did. And Joel, I just want to push this a little bit further because I'm open here to the idea of a nonpartisan, or a bipartisan, I should say, solution to this. But what's your suggestion? I mean, do we just accept the fact that we do have a threat of terrorism from some of these refugees? Certainly a very small minority, and that's a shame that it pollutes the rest of them. But should we accept this as a part of life, or how do we prevent this?
Well, I think one of the ways that I hope that the president does this is by actually consulting the people around him that he's picked for some of these positions. I mean, you look at, you know, General Kelly, who's our newly installed DHS secretary, was not consulted until the order was actually placed. Chairman McCall, you know, on Capitol Hill, was not consulted. These are not liberals. These are not progressives who are diametrically opposed to the president. These are people in his own party and who allegedly are supposed to be there to support him. So if we can't trust this president to work collaboratively with his own team, how do we know that he's going to do that? I mean, I guess I would pose the question to you. Does that make you feel comfortable that this president does not even feel good enough about trusting his own DHS secretary, or his own national security experts that he surrounded himself with?
Would you have him ignore his FBI director, James Comey, who testified before Congress that we're facing this threat? I mean, he's taking that into consideration here, and we don't even need that. We can see it for ourselves in Europe and here in America. Like I said, I don't understand. Do you want the idea of open borders? Should anyone be able to come into America at any time for any reason? Because what we have now is not working. We see that. What liberals are proposing would make it even less safe. What do you propose to do to either make it safer, or, like I said, or do you just accept the fact that this is a threat?
Well, my degree is not in national security, but I do know this. I do know that we have a system in place where people are supposed to work together. We have federalism, we have checks and balances. We have 3 branches of government that are supposed to work in concert. And the president and his staff completely railroaded that process over the last 72 hours. And that should be really disturbing, regardless of who you voted for.
Andrea, I'm going to give you the final word here because we're almost out of time. Did he railroad the process?
Absolutely not. Not any more than Jimmy Carter did back in the 70s during the Iran hostage crisis, and no more than President Obama did. You know, and what is more American than fighting theocracy, which is really what these radical Islamists are all about? And what is more American than keeping Americans safe and recognizing our sovereignty as a great nation and protecting this nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic?
Andrea, Joel, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're out of time, but it was great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, we'd like to know your thoughts on the matter, too. Tweet me, Liz_Wheeler. We'll be back in 1 minute.